Hello, my name is Mackenzie, and I am doing my practicum placement at the Stephen Cohen Clinic. This is a military and family clinic here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. It is also adjacent to Hope for the Warriors. It is the same organization, just a heads up, but the Cohen Clinic is the more clinical side, and the best way to describe the Hope for the Warriors is that it's the more case management side, but they do overlap. To simply state it, the history and mission of the Stephen Cohen Clinic is just to provide effective care in an effective manner to military and families. This is something that they do very great because everybody in military community knows that getting access to care on base is hard. You have to go through so many little phone tree systems to get one operator, and you have to punch 5 or 6 little dials, and it's just the most annoying process ever. And that's if you actually get to speak to somebody, and that's before if you actually don't have to wait like 3, 4, 6 weeks. And you know how that goes if you are having a mental health crisis. You want accessibility to care, and in a nutshell, that is all I'm going to say on the history of mission because they they just do a fantastic job at mitigating some of the gaps and making it easier process for the military family members. As far as the scopes and services of the Stephen Cohen Clinic, we've got individual therapy, couples counseling, family therapy, group therapy, case management services, and telehealth therapy. These are all great options for those who come in to see us. And whenever asking my supervisor what to kind of expect, I thought it was a really great way of whenever clients come in, they'll do an intake and they can actually be paired with a counselor or a social worker, which is really great to hear because sometimes whenever we talk about things that we're comfortable with or kind of like limitations that we might not be ready for or might be triggering for us at that time, especially as a student, we can actually be paired with clients based on their intake form. But anyways, back to services. We've got cognitive behavioral therapy, prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive processing therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which is really good because a lot of military service members and veterans do complain about insomnia. That is something that I've noticed throughout my experience working on military installations. Another great service that they offer is transitional help. Transitioning to civilian life can be very hard, and sometimes people do not take advantage of some of the resources on base. So I think that is great. Services are also available regardless of dishonorable discharge or honorable discharge. I think that that is a really good thing to include because most of the time, if you do not have an honorable discharge, most places will not take you, especially like considering the Veterans Administration. So that is good news for our dishonorable discharge veterans. Um, Regardless of combat experience, this is also a great one. I found a lot of great resources for the community that I am in. My husband is serving in special operations, so um, like All Secure or the Green Beret Foundation, those would be considered special operations. But with the Stephen Cohen Clinic, doesn't matter if you're special operations, it doesn't matter if you are Air Force, it doesn't matter if you are Marines. If you are in the service or if you are adjacent to the service, they are going to see you. And that is great for including everybody in there. And then also the ability to pay for services. They do take TRICARE, they do take Medicaid, Medicare, and then they also do offer opportunities for clients as far as sliding scale opportunities, which is really great, especially for those who cannot afford services. So, again, we're talking about accessibility to care and making it efficient for our clients, which is really great. The Stephen Cohen Clinic's role in the community is that it shows up for its military members in an effective way. They reduce stigma, they offer high quality treatment and accessibility for the military members, which is really great. Moving into point one reason that I knew that I wanted to be part of the Cohen Clinic was that it addresses the stigma regarding mental health and provides a safe place for military members to go to without reporting to their command. This is really important. For one, military members feel like they can't reach out to anybody. to whenever they do reach out, they get kind of reprimanded by their command. And again, we're talking about stigma relative to the client and then also relative to their superiors. So I've seen it in the ER within my last practicum where it's like you have mental health concerns. Military doesn't really care or they see it as annoying or whatever it may be. But I think we are doing a better job with having nonprofits like the Stephen Cohen Clinic because they're addressing that stigma. They're kind of making a stance and they're mitigating the gaps in an effective manner, um, and helping people know that mental health is something that everybody is struggling with in the military community and just really pushing for a change. Second one, high quality treatment opportunities. This clinic is a highly rated facility. It's a well-known profit organization in the military community, and again, most referrals do come from word of mouth, or also even like the base professionals are referring people off base. You've got like MFLACs, which are military and life, family counselors. You've got social workers on base. You've got the ER professionals. We've got so many resources on base that I cannot even like think of it. And then if you're talking about like Army versus Navy versus Marines versus Air Forces, they've got different names for all of it. So we're just going to constitute that as base professionals. We'll even refer off base. And then lastly, accessibility. This organization addresses accessibility as it mitigates gaps in services that the military doesn't necessarily attend to. This is very important. Certain topics that I included in this one are helping veterans transition to civilian life, assisting families in coping with stress of military life and extending its services to military members that are adjacent to the military member. That's very important because no other organization that I have found um, has offered this. Usually it's just to the military member, or sometimes it extends to the spouse or kids, but that's pretty much it. So I really do appreciate that, but I know that we've touched on that before. But again, stigma, quality, or high quality treatments, and then accessibility are three ways to sum up the Stephen Cohen Clinic. General overview of clients for the Stephen Cohen Clinic are pretty simple. I know I've already stated it, but it extends to veterans, military children, military spouses, and active duty members, sometimes even those adjacent to the military member themselves. And again, I'm kind of regurgitating the same information, but the needs of the client can stem from anything from PTSD, mental health disorders, combative related stress, anxiety, depression. Again, transitional needs, meeting those of those who are currently transitioning to civilian life, relationship stress, family stress, substance use issues, deployment reintegration. I know that on their website, I didn't include this in here, but it does mention grief very briefly. But more so, I would say that this population tends to kind of stem from the mood disorders like anxiety, depression, and PTSD. All right, again, I know I've already said this, but we've got four main referrals. I've already mentioned self referrals, military organizations. This kind of brings in the third one, which is healthcare providers. One that I did not mention is the Veterans Administration. That is a very good referral system that we've got. And then I know that I mentioned this as well, is that Hope for the Warriors is the main hub. And then we are the Stephen Cohen Clinic, which is more of the clinical side. But Hope for the Warriors will sit there and send people to our agency that need clinical services. Say somebody comes in for housing, or they connect with one of the social workers at the Warrior Clinic. They'll say, hey, like, we'll take care of housing. We'll do these referrals specifically with you. And then they'll also refer them to us and we'll get started with them. The Stephen Cohen Clinic is mainly supported by government grants that support veterans and military families, also via private foundations, insurances like Medicare, Medicaid, and TRICARE, and through private donations. The two primary laws or public policies that I was able to find that kind of fit in with the Stephen Cohen Clinic's main agenda is the Veterans Health Care Law or Policy, and then the Mental Health Parity and Addiction Equity Act of the Veterans Administration. That is a long one. This impacts our referrals, eligibility, and service positions. And moving on to strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For strengths, we've got high quality care, accessibility to services, which is off base, sliding scale opportunities for services, affordability, having numerous clinics across the United States, strong funding support, and confidential practices. Again, we've already hit these points, so I won't circle back, but definitely being off base provides services and opportunities to loved ones or for service members who don't have access to getting on base again. This kind of stands out for the dishonorably discharged members, maybe veterans who might not have rides to get on base and have to get rides from service agencies, even though I think that they could still get on base. But, anyways, weaknesses. Not all military bases have access to clinic services and the client's perception of mental health. I think that the Stephen Cohen Clinic is doing a great job addressing the mental health concerns and stigma, but I definitely would kind of constitute the client's perception of mental health um, as a potential weakness. We're going to go ahead and kind of disbar one weakness, which is that not all military bases have access to clinical services. And we have telehealth opportunities, which is really great. And I think that the Stephen Cohen Clinic is doing great in that fashion. And that kind of pours into having opportunities for growth in the second one. But I do think that the client's perception of mental health, just because it's still expanding the horizons on how they view mental health treatment. What I've gathered so far by working on military installations is that there's a lack of trust with our military members. You got to think that military members have been reaching out for help, crying for crisis intervention, and they've either been ignored with their previous cries for help, or just had very negative experiences and now they're dealing with problems on their own. And I would also have to say that they don't want to be seen as weak, especially the special operations members. But I think men in general kind of view mental health as a weakness. And that's my personal opinion. I don't know if everybody would agree with that, but I definitely see that with special ops members. And previous people I've met in the military where they're like, they just don't care about us. So I know that it's going to take time to gain the trust of everybody in the military, but I think that the Stephen Cohen Clinic's doing a great job, and I can't wait to see more people come via the referrals. Opportunities for growth. I think that geographical expansion is going to be great for the Cohen Clinic. Again, we've got telehealth services, but um, I would really love to see them grow like the Fisher House. The Fisher House is pretty much at every location, and they offer kind of like free hotel or housing for those going through medical procedures. We had one at our last base, or my last two bases, and that's been very great for members. I always hear positive things about them. Another opportunity for growth is positive change in mental health perception. Again, I think that it's growing in military culture and I'm here for it. Again, we've already talked about telehealth coverage. I already hit that point. I would also have to say there's more fundraising opportunities to support future initiatives. Threats. I put these on here, but I'm kind of biased. I said other military nonprofits. I do think that the military community is very supportive. While I know they're all trying to gain funding, I think the military community nonprofit organizations, the ones that I've seen, like All Secure, the Green Beret Foundation, like they put you in contact with all other resources that are they're not gatekeeping. They want other people to know. They're even like being like, okay, you can receive services with us and them. They just truly want to look out for their own. I don't really see it as a threat, but I put it on the threats list just because, again, you're competing for the same grants. another threat is current political figures' goals. Like some people might not agree with Trump or they might not agree with Kamala, but I would definitely say that maybe one president's goals might not support military funding while another president does. But I will leave that for other people to discuss. Politics kind of freaks me out. Just creates a bunch of arguments. But then I would also have to say preference. And I can't remember what I was going to say about preference. I knew I was going to do that. Preference. I'm so sorry that I'm blanking. I don't know. I should have left that one off or described it a little bit more. All right, as far as unmet agency needs and discussion, for one, I think the Stephen Cohen Clinic is doing an amazing job, and I do think that we have resources. But I recently disclosed in my Planning to Learn assignment that I miscarried last week, and my spouse is currently deployed, which was not a fun circumstance by any means. But I actually found out about a resource through a chaplain that I used to work with at the Joint Special Operations Command, known as JSOC. And he advised me to do the Red Cross emergency notification. He was like, hey, do this. And I was like, that's not going to work. And he was like, I did it when I went through that with my wife. Do it. Let me know when you complete it. So I appreciate him. But I say that to say, not everyone knew of that resource. And I feel like there are a lot of resources that we are not sharing as far as grief and miscarriage support within the military culture. So I know that I spoke with my supervisor about some of my concerns and some of my thoughts or notations that I experienced, like at the ER. And it opened up a really big conversation. But my placement does provide grief support in individual and group therapy sessions, which I think does make a huge difference. But I do think that we have room for growth. I noticed there is a lack of resources for women who miscarry. For example, the Stephen Cohen Clinic kind of highlights that they offer grief support, but it's like PTSD, anxiety, depression, all of these things, grief, and then it's like sandwiched in. I think that I am going to advocate that we highlight it a bit more on the website. I think that that would be great, kind of making it its own section and then also making it um, available for the public. Like, actually, I don't want to say marketing it, but like pushing the information out to be like, hey, like we have these resources for those who are struggling. I think there's a lack of online discussion for miscarriage support as far as military organizations goes and military resources on base. And I told my supervisor that I'd love to, I don't know, make this a project where I can kind of pour into this and kind of meet the gaps that I'm noticing. I've got a bunch of great feedback, and I'm actually hoping to implement from my experience. Some of that is actually going to be with hospital staff tomorrow. I know I've already talked to like the ER lead, patient advocacy, and then I'm meeting with, I don't even know the department name, but they work directly for the CO and XO and all of the people that are basically the high ups for the hospital. Because miscarriage doesn't really come like in a birds and bees type forum. There's no how-to guide. It's a learn as you go process, and that's really hard if you think about it for military spouses who their spouse is deployed. They're coping on their own. And I explained to my supervisor that the military isn't really doing a good job at attending to families in a state of crisis. Um, and just to kind of like give a nutshell, I left the hospital without resources, no knowledge, and so many questions. Again, I told her I'd love to advocate for these areas, um, add it to the website with its own little blurb, not just sandwiched in. and just kind of creating more cohesive resources for those who do miscarry. And one cool thought that I did have for unmet needs is, I don't know, maybe doing like a compassion project. I think it would be great to kind of like do little bundles of things that I thought that would be helpful during that time. Like I know some days is like a more holistic type, like cramp cream. I thought that that was beneficial. Better pads versus hospital pads. Um, Tylenol, you're gonna need Tylenol. You're gonna need resources. You're gonna need like a list of things to do. You're gonna need counselors. Putting everything like in a little pamphlet to be like, here are counselors, here's chaplains, here is this, maybe like a devotional or maybe just words of encouragement. I'm not really sure what that kind of looks like at this time, but I think that that would be a very great initiative. Um, Also, and again, this is more so with a hospital than it is with my agency, but I noticed that there is no safety planning or there is no crisis intervention for those who miscarry. You're just kind of sent in the ER. You sit there for 8 hours. It's not really an emergency, but it feels like an emergency, or however you want to constitute it. And then you're just kind of like sent back out into the world, left unattended to. And it's like nobody's really tracking those people. So I don't really know if I can advocate for that with the hospital or if I can advocate for that within my agency to say, hey, um, the ER is not going to like really implement this. I think that we should really advocate for this and really push this out there that we can take those who are in crisis and really get them to the right place. All right, employment requirements and opportunities. The Stephen Cohen Clinic requires a Master of Social Work degree, and they typically offer employment opportunities to their interns, which is good news for me. So I'm very excited that I got this placement with them because one, they're a great organization, but two, it's somewhere that I really saw myself wanting to work. So I made sure that I was diligent in ensuring that I could work with the military population. They also prefer to hire military spouses or veterans. It's not required, but that's again a plus for me because I am a military spouse. And then as far as obtaining your licensure, you will need to do that if you want to work at the Cohen Clinic within the allotted time frame after graduating, which I'm so excited for. And then opportunities are also available at the Hope for the Warriors Clinic, but again, that is going to be the non-clinical side of things. But if for some reason I just don't want to go the clinical route, it's really good to know that I would be able to do Hope for the Warriors. Additionally, it's really awesome because this organization, both organizations, to be fair, they offer remote or part-time remote roles. Some people, especially my supervisor, some days she'll do like telehealth visits with her clients, so she won't have to go to the office, which is really good news. Like if we PCS or something, I'd still be able to work with the organization. So that does make me happy to hear because who knows, we might move in like 2 years and I'll love it and want to keep working there. All right, as far as my key leadership points of contact, Nadine Cannon, she is my supervisor. I have provided her email address as well as my additional leadership team. Deborah Rhodes is the clinical lead. She's also very nice. I've met with her and Christopher Hunt, the director of operations. These are my 3 points of contacts. They are all great individuals. I think that I am very lucky and blessed that I have such a great team of super empathetic and positive role models to pour into me during this internship. This is something that I discussed, and this is just like an overshare. This is something that I discussed in my internship. It's like, kind of, what are you looking for? Where do you see yourself whenever you graduate? And I'm like, I'm just looking for somewhere where my mentors can pour into me. I was like, I notated that in my first placement, I really loved it, but I quickly grasped how many social workers didn't want to have interns, or more so, kind of were burnt out. And I was like, I just truly want people that are excited to teach me so I can absorb all of the things that I need to learn during this placement. But that's my really happy thought, especially with my current circumstances. I am very lucky to have a really great supervisor. Miss Cannon is so great. Um, Miss Rhodes is great and Mr. Hunt. They're all awesome, but that is my overshare. And last but not least is my reference page. I only have two references, and I mentioned them earlier on. But I truly enjoyed this class and I look forward to taking your class next semester. I can't wait for the practicum experience. And thank you so much for just checking in on me. I truly appreciate it. And as always, thank you so much. And I hope you enjoy your spring break, Dr. Kaysen.